Welcome back, believers. Today's video will be about how our identity comes from God or originates from God. I felt led to creating this video because, one, for myself, I've wrestled with this just with day and age we live in, with social media or just our environment or people around us, or things that we do like our job or maybe an activity or sport we play or type of exercise that we do, how those things are shaping our identity, which your identity can kind of extend to those things, but I wanted to really tackle how the source and the root of our identity originates from God, because He ultimately created us in the beginning. And I have a few scriptures to help us just to clarify that. And one starts in Genesis 1:26 through 27. I'm just going to read parts of verse 26, and you can go back to these texts as well to get a better understanding. But 26 begins, "Then God said, 'Let us make man in our image, after our likeness.'" And 27 reads, "So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, He created him. Male, female, He created them." So this was a really eye-opening verse just to kind of go back to, and just doing some research for this video. And this is a popular verse that we always hear, but just adding context to it, this really stood out because we lose sight of that. We lose sight that our identity isn't a complex thing, even though the world likes to make it out to be. And God, going back to the Bible, makes it very clear, even with gender roles, which that's a very controversial and hot topic now, just for the sake of how there's just so many things going on and deriving from that. But yeah, like, so with the image, it already shows He created us, He formed us, He gave us the intention as male and female, which I'll go into another verse where it talks about in Psalm 139 verses 13 through 15, "For you formed my inward parts, you knitted me together in my mother's womb." And verse 14 reads, "I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well." And the last verse, 15, "My frame was not hidden from you when I was being formed or made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth." So these are also just additional verses that I thought were helpful to share with you guys, because it's listing it plainly how He created us while we were in our mother's womb, and even before that. And these are only a few verses, but how we were intricately woven. Or you can translate to that where God specifically created us with great detail, and how we should go back to that as far as our identity versus going back to the world, because that goes to show how He already had a purpose and a plan for us, which Jeremiah 29:11 also adds more context for that. So it's really important to understand that God really thoughtfully and intentionally designed us, and not for the world to identify, but for us as believers to identify with, and it's really important. And then for me, it's just like, it's so easy to just kind of get identity from work, and I get identity from all these, like, they could be trivial pursuits, because at the end of the day, these things don't matter if we're not in full alignment or understanding with how God created us. And this is a process. This is not an overnight endeavor, and anything great is nothing overnight. It takes a process. So I would just encourage you guys to really just get to a quiet place, pray, and really ask God, and even go back to His Word on how God can help you go back. Because I look at a lot of stuff that we're dealing with now as more so reverse engineering. Like, we're going back to how God intended for us believers and I know that's quite contrary to the world or people who are worldly, but yeah, we're reverse engineering. We've been taught certain things or conditioned to believe certain things, and now we're like reverting back because we're almost in like a crisis mode spiritually. So it's really important now to kind of go back, and I would say so that we're reverse engineering even, and this is kind of another topic just about how I see believers more focusing more on going back to like just cooking, going back to kind of the more so the basic things of how God had us versus this instant gratification or trying to work for accolades and all those things to try to feel valued and all those things, which those things aren't inherently bad, but they do get us away when we're not properly viewing ourselves and our purpose that God created us with the right mindset. So this is just some food for thought, but continue to just ask God, like, God, show me your way, simplify it for me so that I am not confused and I'm not trying to follow the crowd or society's antics. And a lot of it is too the stuff that we watch, even through movies or different things, Netflix and all that stuff, which these are just programming us to get more so far from out of alignment from God. So really just taking a step to like unplug from all these things, whether definitely or indefinitely, would help us get more clarity to figure out what that looks like and to live it out, most importantly. And I can just speak for them too, from my perspective of my identity originating and starting with God, of being a man, and how being a man is several things, but it leans more to like being strong in our presence, leading by example, being able to provide, being able to just help others, and not just lead with our physical strength, but be strong mentally and live by wisdom and through wisdom of God and not of the world, and being disciplined. And these things could also apply to women, but there's some things that can't be explained. It's almost of an innate wiring that God created us with to live out on the earth, and society and the world tries to make that more so confusing and more so optional. But if we look at it as like we don't control who we are in the sense of like our gender or our biological makeup, even though there's science and all these interesting inventions and discoveries, but these are all really to just take us off path, to have us in misalignment and have us just really in a destructive state that we can't really show up for ourselves, or even most importantly serve God with the intention He created us with. So really just kind of take note of that, and really just go back into the Word to really understand what our identity and His makeup and the intricacies that God used when creating us in the beginning of time. Like there's also a verse where it says God knows the number of hairs that we have on our head. So that even speaks to more so the level of detail that just goes into us, and it's not just by coincidence, it's really by design. So just continue to remember that in the midst of this fallen world, that God created you for a purpose. Your life starts with Him, and that the distractions out there in the world, they're just meant to try to take you away from that. So remember that and make it simple. So until next time, thank you guys. I hope you have a great one. Bye-bye.